So Don says, aside from the workings, I am concerned about the physical distortions of the instrument in the area of hands and arms. Is there a, shall we say, mental exercise or something else that the instrument could work on to help to alleviate the extreme problems she has at this time with her hands? Ra says, yes. Don says, would this be an exercise of meditation and contemplation upon the alleviation of these problems? Ra says, no. Don says, what would she do then in order to alleviate these problems? Ra says, as we have said, this instrument, feeling that it lacked compassion to balance wisdom, chose an incarnative experience whereby it was, of necessity, placed in situations of accepting self in the absence of other self's acceptance, and the acceptance of other self without expecting a return or energy transfer. This is not an easy program for an incarnation, but was deemed proper by this entity. And here we have exactly what I said before, and much better phrased, of course, where Dawn is asking, alleviation of her hands and arms problem, all those distortions. What can she do? And is there something that she can do? Ra says yes. It's meditation and contemplation. What's it? What did you say? Would this be an exercise of meditation and contemplation upon the alleviation of these problems? See, that's not how meditation and contemplation works. Meditation, if anything, and contemplation would lower at least the activity of the mind so that what is flowing through you can be perceived. You see, if you're talking all the time, which is our mind, if you're talking all the time, you can't listen what anything else is saying or anybody else. Imagine you talking like me here. If somebody else was talking, I couldn't listen to them because I'm talking. Nobody's, and I can't listen to anybody. So in the same way, meditation and contemplation lowers this overabundance of chatter in your mind. And as activity of the mind subsides, then other information that is flowing through you, because you're not your intellect, you're not your mind, there is an information flowing that needs to be materialized, if you will, in thoughts, and then they'll come up. And you would say, oh wow, this is happening. I recently recorded a podcast talking about this and how meditation helps to communicate with that information that is always flowing. And I explained this exactly as I was discussing with somebody who was telling me her progress with meditation and the things that were flowing now through her mind, which she didn't know. There was a voice in her head, and the information she was given was beautiful. We are all together at this, we're all one, and so on. This is a sort of channeling, if you will, too. And so meditation and contemplation work that way, to see those things, and suddenly you say, oh, okay, I understand. And by understanding your own self, then healing can happen, because behaviors will change. And so what is it that Carla can do? So Ra says, this instrument, feeling that it lacked compassion to balance wisdom, this is the entity prior to incarnation, of course, because they say chose an incarnative experience whereby it was of necessity placed in situations of accepting self in the absence of other self's acceptance. So see, her predisposition, her proclivity, was to love people regardless of the other's acceptance. People would reject her, and she would still find a way to love him for that and accept them, understand them. This is a beautiful way, to explore compassion, but also the acceptance of other self without expecting a return of energy transfer. Basically, just helping you without expecting anything in return. This is a programming. that Ra says it's not easy for an incarnation, but it was proper for the entity, for Carla. She wanted to experience this, so she got that. Now, if she explored this, because this is something that will come up to you in meditation, or at least to Carla, you will feel, it sounds silly to say it, but you will start accepting yourself as you are and say, well, I do love that. For example, I noticed that this is something that I didn't do. Things like these, I just know were pre-incarnatively chosen by me. I always had an inclination to talk to people who were in distress and offer them a way through analysis, intellectually, always, since I was a kid. I was 10 years old when I wrote my first letter to somebody who was very distressed by the divorce of her parents. And I remember writing this and I remember the essence of it just being, you are a beautiful person. You have nothing to fear about the separation of your parents. Like you're perfect the way you are. There's nothing wrong with you. If memory serves, she was feeling guilty of that. And, this is something that I've always had. It just brings me pleasure. It's a sort of pleasure that I can't find anywhere else. And it's just the possibility of helping another person see who they are in some way or another. I didn't know anything about any of this, of course, but I continue to do it even in my atheist days. I would just love to talk to people who are suffering for something and see how I could help. I don't think this is a very special thing. I think this is very common among us. But you see, I think that it's a pre-incarnative choice, I believe. So I could experience that. And if I would repress that for some reason, because I just didn't feel worthy of talking to people, or I was an introvert for some reason, then some things were wrong in my configuration in this incarnation. But thankfully, that hasn't been the case, and I just still love, especially now more than ever, to help people. I just love it. I just love to show them what they can see because they're too blind to accept themselves. In any case, they do go on with this answer, and we have more where Ra says, this entity therefore must needs meditate and consciously, moment by moment, accept the self in its limitations, which have been placed for the very purpose of bringing this entity to the precise tuning we are using. So, yeah, this is powerful. Further, having learned to radiate acceptance and love without expecting return, this entity now must balance this by learning to accept the gifts of love and acceptance of others, which this instrument feels some discomfort in accepting. I can relate. These two balancing workings will aid this entity in the release from the distortion called pain. The limitations are, to a great extent, fixed. So, these last two parts, just beautiful. Ra says that, you see exactly what I was saying. I mean, if you don't know, and you meditate, and you keep seeing this self, it's almost like an image of yourself coming in a beautiful way, showing you who you are, and saying, hey, accept me. Because the option is that you're rejecting this beautiful part of yourself that wants to do this. So, Carla meditating, would have seen herself as, yes, I truly love, giving to people without expecting anything in return, and accepting them even though they don't accept myself. I do love that. By you saying that, and in the case of Carla, you're opening yourself to, wow, yeah, I can be this, and I love being this. You see? And then you meditate consciously on this, moment by moment, accepting the self in its limitations, those limitations that made her be the way she was, and for the very purpose of bringing this entity to the precise tuning we are using. I believe this tuning is the balance that Ra found in Carla for the channeling, and she would find this, this is this is sixth density. So if sixth density is being capable of did I say that properly? If Carla was capable of channeling sixth density frequencies, that means that she was being tuned to that precise vibration, and she would rest in that if she would meditate and contemplate these limitations, which Carla then later said that she had by accepting that her limitations were just furthering her spiritual work. Now, Ra continues and says, having learned to radiate acceptance and love without expecting return, this entity now must balance this by learning to accept the gifts of love. See, this is something that a lot of us have. I do have this. It is, there is a certain discomfort in accepting the gift that people give to you. Oh man, I need to meditate on this. Having learned to radiate acceptance and love without expecting return. Having done that, right? Because you just love doing this for the simple fact of seeing the joy in other people. I can relate to this so much. It's funny. There's a reason why I'm laughing. But yeah, you do this and it's just such a joy, to see people, just when they give that aha moment. It's just like, divinity is pouring through them and you feel it yourself. You just want to hug him. It's just beautiful. So having learned to radiate that acceptance and love without expecting anything in return, well, now you must balance this learning with the accepting of gifts of love and acceptance of others, which, again, you didn't plan that. Part of the plan was to just radiate love without any conditions, right? And having done that, you're going to receive gifts, but in that same program, you feel like, no, I don't want anything. But you're being given gifts. So what are you going to do? You need to balance that. And it is kind of hard because you feel like, no, I don't want anything. But you are getting gifts, so you have to accept them. So, and yeah, this instrument feels some discomfort in accepting. I can relate to that, like I said. These two balancing workings will aid this entity in the release from the distortion called pain. Yes, pain, because you're not accepting. This is a message for me. All right, Ra, thank you. The limitations are to a great extent fixed. Of course, yeah, the limitations are there. That's just what it is. This was very helpful for me. I hope it was for you too. I'm sure you are similar in this regard. So, not only learning to radiate without the acceptance of others, you don't care, but also receive the gifts that people give you for what you do.